we just got to take care of us, and then hope they take care of us at the end if we do what we're supposed to do.
In your mind, should there be any doubt if there's an undefeated Big 12 team that you should be in the Final Four? Because there are those that are saying Notre Dame controls their own destiny with one loss. Even if a Big 12 team was undefeated, that they wouldn't jump over the top of them. What would you say to that?
The key to that, Mike, would be in my mind, and I'd say absolutely zero. If the Big 12 goes undefeated, then we're definitely in. I don't think it's even debatable, in my opinion.
Do you think the Big 12, we had this discussion last year, obviously with you and with Gary and so many others, do you believe that the conference does suffer for not having that championship game at the very end as the other conferences do?
I don't know. I think it's a two-way street. I've been in both sides of it. I've played, where you got a championship game, and I've done it this way. And it's extremely difficult this way. The tough thing about playing a round robin is that you got memories with every team that you're playing. When you do it the other way, you skip a team for 2 or 3 years and you come back and get them. But this way, everybody knows everybody. You got memories from the year before, 2 years before, whatever, and it just makes it tough. There's a lot of built-in games with rivalries. The guys know each other a little better, and it's just hard to go unscathed. So I think a one-loss Big 12 team should have an excellent chance to get it, quite honestly.
Mike and Mike will be right back.
I'll say this, too, specifically about Oklahoma. We talk a lot about the Big 12 and their out-of-conference schedule and how strong it isn't. Well, the truth is their out-of-conference schedule isn't the way, like, for example, Baylor's was. Baylor's is extraordinarily soft. Oklahoma played Tennessee.
They did.
Out of the schedule. That's a big game. It's a good game. Tennessee is ranked well ahead in the FPI of, for example, Wisconsin. Alabama's going to get a lot of credit for having played Wisconsin, and you get that credit because when you schedule these games, you can't count on the fact that a team is going to be up or down. But Tennessee is a very legitimate win.
You look at strength of schedule up to this point, Oklahoma's at 57. That's better than Ohio State. That's better than Iowa's, better than Baylor's, but they're in the same conference. But going forward, you're right. The remaining strength of schedule, Oklahoma's number one.
Number one.
Tops in the country, and Baylor's number 4, and Oklahoma State is number 11. So, this is the backloaded part where I don't think they can complain a lot of where the committee put them because they have all the work in front of them right now that can get them where they need to be.
Well, since this man became the head coach at Oklahoma in 1999, the Sooners have won more games than any Power 5 team, 174. Pleased to welcome Bob Stoops back to Mike and Mike on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Good morning, Coach.
Hey, good morning, Mike and Mike. Hope you guys are doing well.
We are indeed.
Thanks,
we always appreciate your time. Obviously, it's a huge week as your team heads to Waco to take on Baylor. Give us a sense of how you approached this season with all of the talk about the Big 12 and how, for the most part, the big teams in the conference, including yours, are so backloaded. You have the number 1 remaining strength of schedule. So take us through the way you approached this season knowing that all this was looming.
Well, truly, when you're the one that has to play and compete, you can't look ahead. You have to truly invest each week, and it's singular focus on each week. And that's what we've tried to do, and that's all we're doing right now.
And as you do that, shame on, I guess, a lot of us. We talk about the Big 12 and the offenses. We talk about Baylor's offense and TCU offense. Your guys' offense is just, is so powerful, and I don't think that the kid Baker Mayfield, gets enough love. Tell us a little bit about him and why he's had so much success this year to the tune of 28 touchdowns and just 4 interceptions.
Yeah, Mike, he truly is. He's on pace, with actually even ahead of where Sam Bradford and Jason White were at this time, 2 Heisman Trophy guys, and he's just making great decisions with the football. He's been very, very accurate, making great decisions when to hand the ball off, when to pitch it outside. He's even changing plays, changing runs at the line of scrimmage. He's been excellent.
And now, of course, you go up against a team, though, to turn it to your defense, because you are top. Actually, yours is the only team in the country that's top 15 offense and defense in our football power index. You go up against mighty Baylor. They fling the ball around. They put huge numbers on the board. So I would assume that when you go into a game, you think, we're going to take one thing away. What is the one thing you need to take away from Baylor on Saturday?
Well, always the run game. They would love to run the football for 500 yards. That's what they try and do every week, and you've got to be able to to hopefully control the line of scrimmage and limit the run game to some degree.
And again, for those that think Baylor just throws the ball around, they run the ball 60% of the time. So I completely get what you're saying there, Coach.
And I think I think, Mike, they're in the top 5 in the country in rushing the ball.
Yeah, there's not many things offensively they're not near the top at. Does your defense, do they use that as a bit of a chip on their shoulder whenever people talk of the Big 12 and the lack of defense, for your guys to raise their hand in their meeting room and say, hey, wait a minute, don't put us into that because look where we rank?
Well, you know what? Here's what's interesting. I think people have selective memory. Think about what did Baylor put on the number 1 defense in the country last year, Michigan State. They had over 600 yards passing, and Baylor lost. But let's be honest, it was 42-41.
Yeah.
And then what did TCU do to number 1 defense in the SEC? Ole Miss.
Yeah,
they put up about 600 yards too and 45 points, I think.
Yep.
So it isn't just Big 12 defense. They're doing it. Some of these offenses have been doing it to some of the better defenses around the country in different conferences.
And so you said you got to stop the running game. People generally haven't been able to. How do you do it?
Yeah, you just you've got to be physical up front. You got to tackle well. We've got to have enough people that are in position. That's the tricky part, is having it, because they split you so wide, is having enough people in proximity to handle the run game.
How about what you have to do offensively? Is this a game where you just say, this is what we do, stop it, or how much adjusting do you do once the game starts to what you're seeing on the field?
Oh, there's always, you try and adjust if there's something you can adjust to. Sometimes it gets down to it's just, it's personnel and physical, and there isn't anything you can do. But you try and make some adjustments. But offensively, I think, you just have to match them as well. Offensively, you've got to be able to stay on the field as well and move the ball and score points also.
And I certainly know you don't have any time to do it at the office as you keep going ahead to the next game and the next game. Is there, when you're just a private moment at home or something, where you still kind of do the what if about the Texas game and what that could possibly cost you down the road?
Not right now. I don't have time for that now, but that's something that, as you know, as a competitor, never leaves you. Yeah, it'll be 2 years from now, and that'll pop up.
People talk, as we try and analyze this, because you well know if you win the rest of your games where the conversation is going to go, and that would wind up being your one loss. I know you have more important things to think about than that now. But people will say, regardless of the records, in a rivalry game like that, sometimes you throw those things out. How accurate is a statement is that? How different is a rivalry game from any other game on your schedule?
Well, that's why they call them rivalry games. Everybody knows that. They're always a little bit different, and again, everybody wouldn't talk about them so much if that wasn't the case.
Yeah. It could certainly wind up being a big topic of conversation, but you got to take care of business in Waco this weekend. One quick one for fun. Again, that game, Oklahoma-Baylor, game day is going to be there. The big game on a huge college football schedule. But I have a note here that says that you were dressed up as Yoda for Halloween. Are we excited for the release of the new Star Wars movie this year?
I'm all for people who are, but I've never seen any of them. It was at the end of the Kansas game, and we were going in the locker room, and I saw one of my assistants, operations guy, saw a young student in the stands with the Yoda mask. I said, see if he won't let me borrow that for 10 minutes to go in the locker room with my visor on top of it with it on, and he was all for it. So just having a little bit of fun, when you can. So did you know it was Yoda, or it was just an arbitrary mask that you saw? No, that's a good point. No, they told me it was Yoda. I asked, I said, who is this anyway? And they said it was Yoda. I said, all right, let's go with it. They said it's Yoda, and you said, can he cover? Yeah.
Well, you guys, you live in such a box sometimes. What is the last movie you saw in the theater?
Golly, that's
play a ton. But the amazing thing is how much you want to look at numbers, saying they haven't played anybody yet, blah, blah, blah. Oklahoma State's, all their strength of schedule, strength of record remaining are all way better than Ohio State's. All of them. Every one of them.
Yeah. So I've been saying that all morning long. You were the one who told me Oklahoma State didn't belong in the four. I've been telling you they do.
No. I don't think they do right now. If they run the table, I think they do. Then my disagreement is with Kirk, who says he still doesn't, if an undefeated, as I said, Big 12 team doesn't make it in, when are they going to make it in? Let's see, after the whole schedule has been played, if there's an undefeated team in the Big 12, what some of the numbers are then.
I got news for you here, my friend.
Yeah.
I'll say it right now. I don't care what the brands are. If Oklahoma wins the rest of their games, they would have a better argument as a one-loss team than Notre Dame.
No, they wouldn't.
Notre Dame's only argument would be they had a better loss. But Oklahoma would have infinitely better wins.
But
much better. What's Notre Dame's best win right now?
You want to talk about they have 2 wins in the top 25. However you want to look at it.
But Oklahoma will have beaten in order to get there. Look at all the teams they'll have to beat.
Yes.
If Oklahoma gets in as a one-loss team, gets there as a one-loss team, they beat Tennessee in the out-of-conference. If they beat TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and who else am I forgetting? They have one more big game. Well, those are the 3 games they have still coming up. They will have better wins than Notre Dame.
That's the only 3 they have left. Baylor, TCU.
They only have 3 games left. So they would have better wins. Now, their loss would be way worse. Losing to Texas.
Their loss would be worse, and Notre Dame would have another win in the top 25 if they beat Stanford.
That would be their best win.
Yeah, but they would have beaten 3 teams if the other teams still remain in the top 25. Well, I don't care who they are. They're still in the committee's top 25.
I think that the strength of schedule of Oklahoma is going to vault past Notre Dame. It won't even be close.
We'll see.
Mike and Mike will be
good wins.
Now, does it count with Oklahoma? Do you give them any sort of pass? Because as bad as Texas was at that time, it is still a rivalry game.
Yeah.
And we know in rivalry games, to be cliche about it, the record often doesn't matter. So do they get anything from that?
I'm more than sure somebody in the committee will bring that up.
You want to bring that up about Oklahoma? Is not USC a good win for Notre Dame?
Yeah, I didn't give you Notre Dame's wins yet.
Pittsburgh, by the way, had 2. Okay,
well, let me give you. So Notre Dame,
I thought you were leaving them out.
No. So they would have 5. Oklahoma would have 5 against teams that are currently in the top 30. Notre Dame would have 3. But they're not the ones, Mike, you're thinking of. Because in the FPI, Temple is 40th and Navy is 54th.
Yeah, well, that's how much I think of the FPI.
Well, my point is, but it works actually in your favor.
Right.
Because you got Georgia Tech,
right, who's better than 30th. His record. And
you got USC, who's currently 7, and Stanford, who's currently 11. So USC obviously has the huge win over Utah. Stanford, I think Stanford's going to beat Notre Dame anyway, so I think it's all going to be irrelevant. But, Michael, I'll turn the question to you from a general sense. Are you weighing more heavily the great win or the more impressive loss?
I'm going with the wins. I would lean toward the wins, but I would give credit to, I would factor in, or I would consider the impressive loss if there's such a thing. So I'm with you on that. But you used the right word a second ago, irrelevant. The fun, and off the top, this is just fun. This is fun to not only try to debate who belongs in the top 4, who should be the first teams out, but to try to get inside the minds of a committee which hasn't made up its mind, and we have no idea what they'll think when it's all said and done. See TCU last year. Who could have thought that TCU would go from 3 to out? Going from 4 to out was one thing. They went from 3rd to out
in 1 week.
In 1 week,
and they won that
after
week.
Blowing out Iowa State.
Right. Yeah.
So who knows what they're going to think by the end of the year? So what you're saying, by the end of the year, when they look at, let's say it does come down to Oklahoma and Notre Dame, by the end of the year, who knows how they will view Clemson? Even though it doesn't look like Clemson is going to fall off, but who knows how they'll view that loss?
Put everything the same. Put everything
if everything stays as is right now.
Number 1,
they would have one loss on the road by 2 points to the number 1 team in the country.
Putting in Oklahoma, or you putting in Notre Dame? Let everything stay the same, which we know it won't, but this is the fun of what we do.
Yeah.
I go with Oklahoma, man.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I would go with Oklahoma.
You too?
If
Oklahoma wins,
get the hell out.
I probably would. It's not easy. Does that make you feel any better?
No,
it's not like I'm
doesn't
decisively like, yes, it's got to be Oklahoma. It's not easy. And this was not easy for you. Are you kidding me? You have 5 donuts.
Yo, wait.
I think Brooksy is off. That's number 30.
Why'd y'all give this dude an hour,
number
30. Y'all should have given 30 and 30. It should have been 30 for 30.
Once upon a time, the Oklahoma-Baylor rivalry was anything but. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, nobody paid attention to this game because the Sooners dominated it. Not anymore. Oklahoma, the last 2 years, falling to Baylor. Those 2 games, losing by combined 63 points. Nobody in Norman has forgotten that. And the Sooners roll into this game on Saturday in Waco with a big old chip on their shoulder. They're a different football team than what we saw in that Texas loss last month. They've scored more than 50 points in their last 4 games. They've rediscovered their running game. Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon, those guys rushing for nearly 300 yards a game since that Texas loss. And don't forget about Baker Mayfield, a guy that can run around, scramble, buy some time. Running quarterbacks have given Baylor trouble. Running games, period. I think that's the key in this game. Can Baylor stop Oklahoma's running game? Lights out offensively the Bears have played. They did not miss a beat with Jarrett Stidham, the true freshman, stepping in last week against Kansas State. This is a big game, obviously, for both teams. Both teams need to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. I've got Baylor winning this one in a shootout in the fourth quarter. Who else but Corey Coleman makes a big touchdown catch to win it for the Bears?
Which player, as you look at this weekend, has the best chance to prove his worth in these matchups, Mel?
Jamie's proved it already, but he's had a great opportunity here against that vaunted Alabama Crimson Tide defense. Dak Prescott, quarterback, Mississippi State, at home in Starkville as an 8-point underdog against this defense, just completely shuts down everybody. And keep in mind, Jamie, he has no running game. He's their leading rusher. Last year they had Josh Robinson. He went for like 1,300 yards. Leading rusher now is 200 plus. Yet his numbers are through the roof. 66.7% completion percentage, 18 touchdowns, just 1 pick. He's 6'2", 230, but he can't carry it alone. Even if he's shut down and controlled against this defense, it's not going to move him down at all. You expect Alabama to do that. If he can do well in this game, Jamie, and lead the Mississippi State Bulldogs to an upset, then all of a sudden he moves way up. But nothing in this game is going to hurt him. Dak Prescott, the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Phil Savage runs that great all-star game. That'll be pivotal for Dak Prescott. He's had a heck of a year.
We know the draft market always fluctuating. Name one player whose stock is on the rise right now.
Corey Coleman, the wide receiver, Baylor. He's at 24 on the big board. He's climbing. This is a kid who's got 20.3 yard average per catch, 20 touchdowns. Everybody else on that team has 18. He's got 20 touchdown receptions. And also keep in mind, when you think about Corey Coleman, he's the go-to guy. And I think proof positive is the number 2 receiver, KD Cannon. He's got 29 more catches, Coleman does, than Cannon. He's got 32 more catches than their number 3 guy, Jay Lee. Everybody knows you got to kind of contain Corey Coleman, and nobody can do it. They're a 3-point favorite against Oklahoma. Big game coming up for Corey Coleman.
As mentioned, Vegas still has Leonard Fournette as the Heisman Trophy leader favorite, followed by Derrick Henry and then Corey Coleman of Baylor. Now, Baylor has a huge showdown against Oklahoma this Saturday. Baylor's offense has been rocking and rolling. They average 57 points per game. That's tops in the country. But Oklahoma, they're right there at number 3, averaging 46.3 points per game. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Bears defense. And let's talk about defensive end Shawn Oakman. The dude is 6'9", 275 pounds. There's a lot of memes about him, about how intimidating his stature is. But that said, on the field, he's got 3 sacks this season. Is Oakman overrated?
Paging Shawn Oakman. Got to show up in this game. You know, and this is one of the big games. You talk about big stages, Kerry. These are the kind of games where players make their legacy. They make their names. He's played okay this year. Hasn't played great in the Big 12 games, done okay. But he could undo everything that's happened if he steps up in this game against Oklahoma, makes a lot of big plays. They don't need him to make 15 or 16 tackles. But what Baylor needs is they need big plays, particularly in the red zone. They have not been very good in the red zone defense. They've not forced, in fact, any fumbles or any turnovers in the red zone. That's where they need a guy like Oakman to really step up, get them off the field, sacks, turnovers, when it counts. Again, he's a guy that's got to get it done. But, you know, in his defense, it's hurt that Andrew Billings, one of Baylor's outstanding defensive tackles, has been hurt. He did not play in the Iowa State game. He played sparingly against Kansas State. How healthy is he? I can tell you this, Shawn Oakman, any defensive end for that matter, is a lot better when he's got his guys in, the top guys at defensive tackle.
I mentioned all those memes about Shawn Oakman. One of my favorite here, Chris, is that Shawn Oakman, he goes to Chipotle, orders extra guacamole, doesn't have to pay any extra. He's just that intimidating.
Well, if you've seen him up close, and I've had a chance to watch Baylor practice, if he doesn't make it in pro football, and I got a feeling he will, there's definitely a career for him somewhere in the WWE.
Big game in the Big 12, Oklahoma at Baylor. My computer loves Oklahoma, rates them the number 2 team in the country. Both offense and defense rank in the top 7. In fact, in the last 3 games, Oklahoma is very balanced with 316 yards per game rush, 354 yards per game pass. And they're outgaining their Big 12 foes by 235 yards per game. Baylor only by 174. Stidham was a true frost last week for Baylor at quarterback, and they only beat Kansas State by 7. But I like Baylor here. You know, last week was a first road start for a young quarterback, and they led that game 31-10 in the fourth quarter. He'll be in much better shape here at home. Baylor's beaten Oklahoma in the last 2 meetings by 29 and 34 points. In fact, the last 5 years, Baylor has hosted a ranked team. They are 8-0 straight up and 7-1 against the spread. And their only non-cover, they won that game by 3, which would be enough to cover here. There is 4 outright upsets in that mix as well. Baylor's much better at home than they are on the road. They outgain their opponents by 360 yards per game and outscore them by 38 points per game. I'm going to take the cheap price here and take Baylor minus the 2.5 at home over Oklahoma.